Did you know there is a town in Norway where it's illegal to die? Apparently, so the internet says. It conjures up images of a corpse being arrested and thrown in jail. Barbaric, scream those who will believe absolutely anything they read on the internet. So what's the truth about this place? For those of you who have just stumbled across our channel, welcome. I'm Sam, this is Gary, and here at TABOO Education we post videos related to death and dying every Friday. So join us. Click subscribe and let's get into it. Now let's talk the place where it's illegal to die. Longyearbyen is the world's northernmost settlement and the capital and largest inhabited area of Svalbard, Norway. To paint a clearer picture, let's put it on the map. And let's zoom in. And a bit further, there we go. The town has been known since the 1800s for coal mining, tourism and research centres in biology, geology, geophysics and tech. Currently there are around 2,400 residents from 53 different countries living there. Around 115,000 tourists visit the town annually, of which 35,000 arrive by cruise ship from overseas. However, if you are planning on going there, it does have its own airport and SAS and Norwegian Airlines fly there regularly. Some fun facts about the place: according to their tourism website, the town only has one lonely grocery store, yet it has a university campus for 300 students, all of whom must use how to use a firearm because polar bears wandering through the town is commonplace, as is reindeer. Seeing whales swimming through the fjords from your lounge room is not an uncommon occurrence. And during the winter darkness, they wear headlamps on their way to work, and it's not uncommon to see the northern lights dancing in the sky when they head outside to meet a friend for lunch. I may have gotten a bit overexcited and done some research into what uni degrees I could do there and move, but yeah, back to this video. But yes, now you have an idea of what kind of place Longyearbyen is, we can move on to the death part. Why is it illegal to die there? First, we need to talk about the somewhat boring but necessary geology of the area. The area is characterized by permafrost, meaning the ground remains frozen year-round. To elaborate, permafrost is made of a combination of soil, rocks and sand that are held together by ice and is harder than concrete. Near the surface, permafrost soils contain large quantities of organic carbon, a material left over from dead plants that couldn't decompose or rot away due to the cold. Lower permafrost layers contain soil made mostly of minerals. A layer of soil on top of the permafrost does not stay frozen all year round. This very thin layer, called the active layer, thaws during the warm summer months and freezes again in fall. In colder regions like Longyearbyen, the ground rarely thaws, even in summer. There, the active layer is very thin, 10 to 15 centimetres or 4 to 6 inches, so you aren't going to be burying a body there. But Sam, I hear you say, bodies are buried in frozen ground all the time. They either wait till it thaws out or they heat up the ground and put the body in. True, but that is in places where the ground will at some point in the year thaw completely and for months at a time. That doesn't happen in Longyearbyen. Which brings us to the next problem. Longyearbyen has had a decent amount of people living there since the 1800s. Back then, the dead were transported to a nearby village for burial. Then, in 1918, 11 people died of the Spanish flu, and a graveyard was established in the town. 2 years later, 26 men were killed in a coal dust explosion at one of the mines, and they too were buried there, along with others that had died of tuberculosis and other common diseases of that time. Now, for the life of me, I couldn't find out how or why, but in the 1950s, researchers discovered that the bodies laid to rest in that graveyard had not decomposed at all. And worse than that, the diseases that killed many of them were still present in their frozen tissue. That's bad. It was at this point that the town's council and the public decided that for the safety of the living, burial must be prohibited in Longyearbyen. From then on, if someone passed away in the town, their body must be transported to mainland Norway for burial where conditions are less extreme. But it's not just their diseased corpse popsicle issue that has made death prohibited here. This is a town of around 2,000 residents, and like other towns of that size, services are limited to necessities because that's all they can afford to run. Also, massive hospitals with all the equipment you could ever dream of is just a short flight away. So the small hospital in the town isn't set up to deal with extreme trauma, long-term elderly care or end-of-life care. In those situations, you will be swiftly medevaced to the mainland. In fact, to be a resident in Longyearbyen, you need to have an address on the mainland for that very reason. You're going to be sent there for treatment if you need it. And people have actually died in Longyearbyen since the 1950s. Of course they have. Sudden death happens. But there isn't many, and the vast majority of residents say they would choose to be buried on the mainland anyway, near family. But if their family does choose to have them buried in Longyearbyen, they still can, but it can only be of their cremains. So is it actually illegal to die there? No. It has never been illegal to die in Longyearbyen. Has it been prohibited? Also no. It is only illegal and prohibited to be buried there. So where the hell did this myth of it's illegal to die there come from? Well, back in 2008, a journalist from the BBC took a few creative liberties when they entitled an article, "Why Dying is Forbidden in the Arctic." Aside from the very obvious clickbait title, the second line of the article said, "It is forbidden to die in the Arctic town of Longyearbyen," followed by, "Longyearbyen's no-death policy stems as much from its remote location as from its harsh climate." Over time, journalists have recycled the article to create their own, running the main words through a thesaurus, I imagine, and quickly turning forbidden into illegal. So now would be a good time to remind everyone not to believe everything you read online, particularly if it's coming from a tabloid source that looks like it could have been put together in 5 minutes or less. And as a side note, there is an interesting variation of this myth that says that it's illegal for babies to be born in Longyearbyen, which again isn't true. Doctors do require those who are pregnant to travel to the mainland to give birth around 3 weeks before their due date, but there's no law against giving birth there. The main reason is, again, the hospital is not equipped to handle that procedure, and it's definitely not equipped to take care of a patient if something goes horribly wrong. Since the townspeople are aware of this, no one really chooses to roll the dice when they go into labour. So no, it's not illegal to die there or be born there. It's just common sense not to do so. Other places where it's illegal to die. In Brazil, the mayor of this area filed a public bill in 2005 to make it illegal for people living in that town to die. Although no specific punishments were presented, the mayor intended to fine or even jail relatives of the deceased. The main reason for the attempt to pass this law was that the town's 28,000 inhabitants apparently didn't look after their health properly, making them more vulnerable to death, which would mean having to bury more corpses in the already full cemetery. Since the cemetery had been inaugurated in 1910, over 50,000 people had been buried in 3,500 crypts and tombs. In November 2005, the cemetery was declared full, and 20 recently deceased residents were forced to share a crypt, and several others were buried under the walkways. The mayor, to support his uncommon proposal for the law, stated that 89% of the town is completely occupied by rivers, of which most lay underground and serve as a vital water source for the nearby 2 million people living in São Paulo, and that the remaining area is protected because it is considered tropical jungle. So public land 5 times the size of the cemetery currently was set aside to provide space for a new one, and the state government is even looking into a vertical cemetery building. Over in France, there are 3 towns in the south that have prohibited death. In one area, the mayor outlawed death in 2000 after planning permission for a new cemetery was turned down due to environmental concerns. He described the new bylaw as an absurd law to counter an absurd situation. For similar reasons, in 2007 and 2008, 2 other areas also prohibited death for similar reasons and were subsequently granted permission to enlarge the local cemeteries. Death has also been prohibited in this Spanish town. The village of over 4,000 inhabitants is to remain under this law until the government buys land for a new cemetery. The mayor who issued the ruling explains that the awkward new law is his response to politicians urging him for a quick fix for a long-lasting problem. The ruling has become widely popular amongst residents and even amongst political opponents of the mayor who issued the new law, and was received with a sense of humour from most. And finally, on the other side of the world, is Japan's island of Itsukima. It is considered a sacred location in Shinto belief, and the shrine on the island is a UNESCO World Heritage Site. Purity is of utmost concern in Shinto worship, and because of this, the shrine's priests have attempted to keep the island free of the pollution of death. Immediately after a major battle in 1555, the only battle to have taken place on the island, the victorious commander had the bodies of the fallen troops removed to the mainland and ordered that the entire battlefield be cleansed of the blood that was spilled, to the point that buildings were scrubbed and blood-soaked soil was removed from the island. Retaining the purity of the shrine is so important that since 1878, no deaths or births have been permitted near the shrine. To this day, pregnant women are supposed to retreat to the mainland as the day of their delivery approaches, as are the terminally ill and the very elderly whose passing has become imminent. Burials on the island are still forbidden. I do find it amusing that some actually believe that an actual solid law would be put in place forbidding death, as if humans have such a power. This is a great example of how information can be twisted to fit any angle you want it to. And you need to be very careful where you get your information from. Luckily, in this strange case, it is simply amusing and no harm has come from it. But that can't be said for all misinformation out there. Use those critical thinking skills whenever you are given new information. At the very least, it will save you from face-palming yourself in disbelief that you believe something so silly. And with that, go talk death.